Hello and welcome to another Doctor Assistant 1 video, and today I'm doing a review of the War Games, which is part of the Regenerations box set. If you're not aware, I'm going through all the Regenerations in this box set, which is the first 10 Regenerations, and then giving you my thoughts and opinions on said episodes. So yeah, the second one being Patrick Troughton's last story. Now, prior to the War Games, I'd only really seen him in Tomb of the Cybermen, and that's about it, really. So, yeah, what did I think of his Doctor? I thought he was quite energetic compared to William Hartnell, obviously. He is younger. He is more Doctorish, and he is definitely... there are similarities to the 11th Doctor, I think, because he's not as bumbling and as much of an idiot and that, but he has that sort of quality to him, but it's not over the top like Matt's sort of portrayal of the sort of kind of eccentricness and that. And if anything, he's very intelligent and cunning and sort of devious, and always knows how to get out of a situation or how to sort of progress through something, and I quite like that, really, because he always pushes the narrative forward, which is always nice. The War Games, now the War Games is, Patrick Troughton's last one, 1969 it is, it's by Terrance Dicks, I think, and someone else, but I've forgotten their name. Now originally it was going to be 2 stories, but they condensed it down into 1 story, but expanded the parts it had into a 10-part story, which I think it's the only 10-part story. It's a very influential and sort of, well, not influential, wrong word, a very... it's a very pinnacle and historical story within the sort of Doctor Who lore and mythology and history of the show, because it is the first appearance of the Time Lords. Now, I know this is the wrong costume and all that, but yeah, the Time Lords, really, in big force anyway, but they kind of like puppets, like the master puppeteer person, because they're kind of like behind the scenes manipulating everything, which they should be, really. And I definitely think they are, very powerful, very sort of law-based, not very hands-on, very, stand-back approach to everything, and whereas the Doctor takes much more of a hands-on approach to the sort of whole, helping the universe and whatnot, and he makes his testament and well, not his trial and stuff, but in the end it doesn't matter, because he is unfortunately forced by the Time Lords to regenerate into his 3rd incarnation, and not only that, but he's earthbound down onto Earth, and so that sets the whole tone for the sort of Jon Pertwee era already from the get-go. And I think Terrance Dicks and sort of the producers and that at that time really wanted to do that, so it'd be less costly to kind of try and at least make the sort of outer space sort of sets and stuff like that. Set-wise, it was rather decent and stuff like that. It was very, it was a really good, enjoyable episode, although it was 10 parts, it flew by quite quickly. I thought, I wish we saw more of the Time Lords, but the time we did see with them in, they were very ethereal and very, very stripped back in the fact that they were very, stripped back in the stripped back in the sense that they were like, very maniacal, kind of like, Doctor, you will obey us, and we disagree with your points of view, and he'd be all like, but you can't, I've been saving everyone, all these people from evil, whilst you have done nothing with your powers and stuff, and that, and very ethereal and kind of, had this very massive power and stuff, and maniacal and stuff. And I like how everyone who knows anything about the Time Lords in said episode is very fearful of them, just in showing the intensity of their power and their might and whatnot. There is the War Chief, who is definitely in my opinion at least, will, or later down the line, I think inspires the Master. I think because a lot of the elements, quite a few of the elements that I saw from him that were in placed in the War Chief, I felt like were definitely in placed or embedded in the Ruggiero Gado kind of Master, I think. And yeah, the War Chief is this sort of other Time Lord who escaped, or well, not escaped Gallifrey, but left Gallifrey and kind of disagrees with the Time Lords and whatnot. But unlike the Doctor, he wants to rule the universe and whatnot. So, or at least control it. And yeah, it's a very good story. It paces itself very decently. I think I was only somewhat bored. Part 6 and 7, or either that or 7 and 8, and that where they were literally just running up and down corridors for the sake of running up and down corridors. It definitely felt like that. So yeah, I do think this one does severely kind of, for me at least, it severely what is it? Kept getting very confusing, because like one minute you'd be with, say, these two characters, and then the next minute it'd cut and then you'd be with some other character, and then they'd move somewhere and then like, or go somewhere, but then you'd cut back to these people in the same place talking again, and then cut back to, say, Zoe and Jamie again, and they'd have moved somewhere, and you'd be like, okay, I can't remember that. But talking about Zoe and Jamie, they were decent. They were good companions in this, and they unfortunately get sent back to their own timelines and or back in time, and they only remember the first adventure with the second Doctor, and that is it. And yeah, which is rather sad, really. Yeah. Yeah, it progresses really well. I do wish we saw more of the Time Lords, but for a first appearance, they are very mighty, very, ethereal and very powerful, very maniacal kind of people who, for all intents and purposes, they're very sort of logical kind of beings and stuff, even in the speech, and that, especially in the speech. And that, and the way they communicate and stuff like that. But yeah, they don't show any compassion really towards the second Doctor, which is a shame, really, because he's just, wanting them to see his point of view, which is that they should be, helping people in need, and they just can't see that, which is a shame, really. Yeah, and it's very ambitious, this story, and it's executed really well, though, where I feel like quite a few times in the new series, though, when they have an ambitious story, it falls flat on its face, and just doesn't work, whereas with not all of the classic series episodes, but quite a few of them, when they're ambitious, they do work, though, and that some don't, like Invisible Enemy, for example. That one was, ambitious, but that one really is a bad episode, really. But nonetheless, the War Games is really cool. It's got a good story, it's got a strong story, it paces itself well, it's got good acting from all the characters and actors and actresses, and that it's got decent set design for the time, good regeneration effect, but we don't really see Jon Pertwee at all, but I think that's because they didn't know who was going to cast, they were going to cast. And also, interestingly enough, you do, in the episode, the Time Lords do say, okay, you can choose who you want to be and stuff like that, so, he can choose whether or not, or at least in terms of this story, he could choose, whether or not he was, old, fat, or thin and stuff like that. But yeah, it was much more enjoyable than the 10th Planet in some ways, as an episode, at least, purely on episode-wise, and enjoyableness, if that's even a word. But, obviously they both have two, very historical moments, in the fact that this is the first one with the Time Lords in, and the, setting up the Jon Pertwee era straight from the go, and forcing the Doctor to regenerate and be earthbound, and then the 10th planet has, you know, the Cybermen for the first time and the first regeneration. So yeah, as always, thanks for watching, comment, rate and subscribe.